Okay, after reading section 1 of chapter 2, called Civilization Begins in Mesopotamia, and doing the worksheet, and then watching the lecture videos and highlighting your notes, I want to reiterate a couple of things that you read about in this section. The first thing is Hammurabi's Code of Laws. And Hammurabi was one of the Babylonian leaders who created really the first set of written laws. It was written on this 8-foot tall slab, and it's all the way around it on the front and on the back. And it's written in cuneiform, which you read about. And again, this is a clay tablet. And it was 282 laws, and most of the laws were quite harsh. They had different laws depending on the class that you were in and the gender that you were as well. So this was the first really written code of laws, and so that should be highlighted in your notes. And of course, Hammurabi is a person that should be highlighted as well. Some of the examples of the Hammurabi's laws is if a builder builds a house for a man and it does not make its construction sound, and the house for which he has built collapses and causes the death of the owner of the house, the builder shall be put to death. If a sister of God or a nun who is not living in a convent opens up a wine shop or enters a wine shop for a drink, they shall burn that woman at the stake. Another one, if a man be in debt and is unable to pay his creditors, he shall sell his wife, son, or daughter, or bind them over to service. For 3 years they shall work in the house of their purchaser or master. In the 4th year they shall be given their freedom. If bad characters in a house of a wine cellar arrive, and she does not arrest those characters and bring them to the palace, that wine cellar should be put to death. If the woman has not been careful and has neglected her house and belittled her husband, they shall throw that woman into the water. Of course, one of the two rivers, the Tigris or Euphrates River, is what they're referencing. If a man takes in his home a young boy as a son and raises him, one may not bring claim for that adopted son later. Or if a son strikes his father, they shall cut off his hand. So those were just some examples of some of the really harsh laws. And so Hammurabi's Code was the first code of written laws ever. All right, the Epic of Gilgamesh. The Epic of Gilgamesh was, again, something written in cuneiform, and it was one of the earliest written pieces of literature, and there were anywhere from 11 to 12 tablets, and of course it was written in that cuneiform with that wedge-shaped writing, and it is this epic long poem, and it's really about the afterlife, and if you go to hell, you're going to, like mud will be your meat and dust will be your drink, and living life like those sorts of things. So that is also highlighted in orange. So that should be highlighted in orange because it is read in world literature classes today. All right, so turn in your packets to the chart. This chart will be on the test. I will fill in some of it, and you'll have to fill in what's missing. So it should be on page 27 in your packet. And on the left side are all the different groups of people we're going to talk about in chapter 2. They are not alphabetical. They are listed as they are talked about in section 1, section 2, section 3, and section 4. So we'll just fill this out going down. So I want you to fill in what was the region called then, what is it called today, and what things did they contribute, invent, or start that are still used today. And so those would be the things that would be highlighted orange in your notes. All right. Babylonians lived in Babylon. Fairly easy to remember that. You can also write down that Babylon was in Mesopotamia, so I would accept Mesopotamia as an answer as well, because everyone in section 1 lived in Mesopotamia. Today, Mesopotamia is present-day Iraq along the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, and the Babylonians were contributed the Code of Hammurabi, the first code of written laws ever. And within the Code of Hammurabi, there's a code that says an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, which of course that is a saying meaning if you kill somebody, you too shall be killed. So the retribution would be equal. So again, if you kill somebody, you're killed. So that's what an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth is. And that was fairly accurate unless you were in a different class system. All right, another group of people mentioned in section 1 were the Sumerians. And the Sumerians lived in Mesopotamia as well, but they lived in the region of Sumer. So it was Mesopotamia, still would be present-day Iraq. And the Sumerians came up with a lot. They invented the wheel that we mentioned in chapter 1, the sail that we mentioned in chapter 1, the arch and dome in architecture, that Epic of Gilgamesh that I just mentioned as far as that long epic poem, the sundial to keep track of time, the pottery wheel and the spinning wheel, using the number 60 in math, which we do for 60 seconds, 60 minutes on a clock, and it is in the shape of a circle, which again has 360 degrees. They've kept track of star charts, so keeping track of where they are at what time of the year, and multiplication and division tables that I'm sure you looked at or used when you were studying multiplication and division in elementary. Okay, you will only need to come up with one contribution in that box, but those are all the things they invented. So remember whichever ones you want to remember or can spell, whatever makes it easier for you. All right, then turn to the last page, page 28, and you can see at the bottom left of your map on page 28, there are 6 places that you need to identify on the map for this particular section. And so there are some for each section. So you need to know the Tigris River, and on your map that is letter B. You need to know the Euphrates River, and on your map that is letter D. You need to know the Mediterranean Sea, which we had on our Africa test, so that should be easy to remember, and that is letter C on your map. And then that gray shaded region is Mesopotamia, that is H on your map. You need to know the city of Babylon, which is in that gray shaded region between the Tigris and Euphrates River, and that is M. And you need to know the Persian Gulf, which the Tigris and Euphrates rivers drain into the Persian Gulf, and that is letter N on your map. All right, with the rest of the time, you can complete your notes if you're not done watching the video and highlighting your notes, and then use those notes to do the 2-1 review on Canvas. And there's also the extra credit that I gave to you will be due on Monday as well.